Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Mondays wherever you may be across this great country or across this great land as frenzy sweeps across America and around the world with the coronavirus. Just know this. Your boy who does radio, television, Periscope, Facebook, and writing every single day from his house is probably the most prepared for the coronavirus outbreak in the entire world. No matter what happens, I'm going to be here slaving away just about every day. All right, several things I want to dive into. Brady and Vrabel are FaceTiming at the Syracuse UNC game. Tony Romo is a $17 million a year man. He is going to make over $150 million guaranteed to call NFL games for CBS. Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar have dropped out of the Democratic race. Both plan to endorse Joe Biden. The anti-Bernie manipulation of the Democratic race has begun. I don't really blame the Democrats. I'll tell you why. Coronavirus panic is everywhere. Everywhere you look, coronavirus. Nike, slave labor going on in China. Your boys LeBron James and Colin Kaepernick, who are always social justice warriors about everything, they won't say anything about the slave labor going on in China, according to the Washington Post. Art Briles. Got a big interview with Art Briles up on the Wins and Losses podcast. I'm going to talk about that story with you. And Fury Wilder 3 officially underway, and I cannot wait to get rolling with all of these topics. And so we begin with Tom Brady and Mike Vrabel FaceTiming alongside of Julian Edelman. I want to start with this question for everybody out there. Do you FaceTime with other men? Yes or no? I'm going to be honest with you. The only people I have ever FaceTimed with in my life, I believe this is to be true, other than somebody who's like, hey, something is not working associated with my with the tech in my house. I think I've FaceTimed with somebody before, been like, hey, what should I do here? Because my only technological knowledge is to pull out the, pull it off, pull out the cord and restart it or whatever. So I am genuinely curious on this, whether or not you have ever FaceTimed with another grown man. I haven't. I'm going to confession with you. The only grown man to ever FaceTime me is Matt Leinart. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but I thought that Matt Leinart had pocket dialed me when he was FaceTiming me. He was calling me from Fox. He just wanted to chat and touch base because he hadn't talked to me in a while. And so I am not a FaceTimer, all right? I FaceTime with my wife. I FaceTime with my kids. Other than that, I almost never FaceTime with anybody. I honestly can't think of anybody else that I've ever FaceTime with. I understand if you have kids. I understand if you are talking to your wife or your girlfriend or maybe your side chick and you want to look at them. But I think it's funny that Vrabel and Tom Brady, who are around my age, they're a couple of years older. I think it's funny that they are FaceTiming. I also think it's strange that they went to a Syracuse UNC game in the first place. Now, all this does, in my opinion, is confirm what I have already told you. If Tom Brady leaves the New England Patriots, and I don't think that Tom Brady is going to leave the New England Patriots, but if he does, he's going to go to the Tennessee Titans. That's it. That's all it tells you. It further confirms that Brady and Belichick are really good friends. And I made this analogy on the radio show this morning. If Brady leaves Belichick, he is going to go somewhere that is the exact opposite of the environment that he's already been in. Much like when you end a relationship with a girl or guy, the next person you likely get into a relationship with is very different than the person you were with. You don't go out and date somebody just like the person you broke up with. Brady is going to want a coach that he enjoys playing for that is more friend than it is boss. And I'm not sure how exactly that will work out for him, because I do think that Belichick, probably great coach that he is getting the most out of Tom Brady. But I don't think this is difficult to forecast at all. Brady is going to go to the Titans if he leaves the Patriots. Again, I still believe Tom Brady is messing with us some. I think he enjoys knowing that people are still interested in him, but I think ultimately he is going to come back and he is going to continue to play with the New England Patriots. But if he leaves, I think he goes to the Titans. Bit of a wrinkle here for the Titans. They have to make a decision during this franchise window. Do they franchise Ryan Tannehill or do they franchise Derrick Henry? They can't franchise both, especially if the new CBA passes and they don't have the opportunity to transition tag and franchise tag, which, by the way, is the same thing the Dallas Cowboys are dealing with Amari Cooper and with Dak Prescott. So I think the likelihood is the Titans are going to end up franchising Derrick Henry if they get the opportunity to get Tom Brady. Otherwise, I think they franchise Tannehill, wait, potentially trade him, because you can trade somebody under the franchise tag and they can sign a new deal. If it doesn't make sense going forward, they could still get an asset for Ryan Tannehill. I think that's probably the best play. But I do think it's funny. I also think it's strange. My best bet as to how this happens is that Julian Edelman is like kind of messing with Brady and called Vrabel. But you have to assume that somebody's going to see you talking to Mike Vrabel in that crowd, and that's how it ended up getting out there for everybody to be able to see. All right, want to give a clap. Congratulations to Tony Romo. $17 million plus a year over the next 10 years, reportedly. $180 million-ish, according to a report in the New York Post. Your boy told you a couple of weeks ago that this dollar figure was going to pass $15 million, and it was going to end up somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 million. It ended up going out and nailing that and ending up almost dead smack dab in the middle between those numbers that I told you it was going to hit. Now, this is, first of all, congratulations to Tony Romo, who's going to make way more money now calling football games than he ever made playing football games, which is unheard of. I think the big question that's out there is this. Is this new deal, which Tony Romo is getting, is it a sign of things to come for people in this space, or is it like the contract that Howard Stern signed when he suddenly got $100 million from satellite radio? And I don't know that anybody else has ever gotten more than, let's say, $30 million. I think that Rush Limbaugh makes around $25 or $30 million a year. I don't know that anybody else in radio has ever made more than $30 million a year. And then, boom, Howard Stern's out of here with a $100 million a year deal from Sirius. But I do think the reason why this happened, and I laid it out for you, is CBS had to send a message to the NFL about how desperate they were to keep the NFL. And so if they let Tony Romo walk and go to ESPN, that would be their second straight loss at CBS. They lost the SEC game of the week. They were going to potentially lose Romo. They already demoted Phil Simms. They've got the Super Bowl this year. CBS was up against it and needed to do whatever it took to get Romo under contract, and they did that. Now for ESPN, they've got to make real decisions going forward. What's going to happen in their Monday Night Football booth? Interesting story from Andrew Marchand at the New York Post. He says that in the middle of the negotiations at CBS with Tony Romo, that CBS went to Peyton Manning and offered him $10 to $12 million a year to take over the Tony Romo gig when they were aware that ESPN was theoretically going to hire away Romo. So CBS tried to back channel a replacement for Romo, and they couldn't manage to do it. I don't think there's an easy fit for ESPN as they try to make the argument, hey, we deserve the Super Bowl, and we want to put Monday Night Football on ABC. Past 2 years, they went with their own version of what they hoped was going to be Romo, Jason Witten, Joe Tessitore, and Booger McFarland. This past year was Booger McFarland and Joe Tessitore. It seems to me that they are in the process of remaking this announced team, and I have no idea really what ESPN is going to do for Monday Night Football going forward. So that in and of itself is a story worth following, but congrats to Tony Romo on hitting the market absolutely right, and boom, he is making a ton of money. All right, Bernie versus Biden versus Bloomberg is now coming up tomorrow on Super Tuesday. I think we'll have a live Super Tuesday reaction show tomorrow, unless there's major news earlier in the day, in which case I'll go earlier. But the two big stories in the world of politics are Mayor Pete and Amy Klobuchar have both dropped out and are reportedly going to endorse Joe Biden. The Democrats now are making a full court press to try to keep Bernie from getting the nomination. And if you look at the delegate totals, given the fact that Bloomberg appears to stay in the election through Tuesday, although theoretically, I don't know what the rules are. I think he could swing his delegates towards Biden in the end. But right now, it looks like there's not likely to be anyone who gets a majority before the July convention in Milwaukee. The Democrats are pulling out all the stops to try to keep Bernie from getting their nomination, much like in 2016. And honestly, I don't blame the Democrats, because I think running a socialist, as they well understand, is devastating to the ticket down the Senate race. The Senate race as they try to battle in the Senate as well as in the House. And they are pulling out all of the powerful people in the Democratic Party are pulling out all the stops. Now, there is an irony here. The Democratic Party, which supposedly embraces diversity and all of the young, has now managed to have its race come down to three super old white guys. A 77-year-old Joe Biden is the youngest of the three remaining candidates. Bloomberg is 78, and now Bernie Sanders is 78. They are all running against each other, and the Democrats have managed to have three finalists who are all 5 years older than Donald Trump. This is crazy. I've made the argument before, and I would re-endorse it here. We have an age minimum. I don't know why we don't have an age maximum for president. I think you should not be able to be elected president if you are going to be over the age of 70 on your inauguration. I think that is a perfectly wide window of 35 to 70 in which we could elect presidents, all right? It is way too old, I believe, to have people who are almost 80 years old getting elected to their first terms as president, regardless of whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. If we are going to have a lower level age limit where we say flat out, you are not old enough to be elected president unless you're at least 35, I think we need to have, on the flip side, an age at the top end where we don't allow people to be elected after the age of 70. So this is a story that is worth following. It appears after Super Tuesday, I believe what is very likely is that Mayor Bloomberg will drop out right then and there, and we will be looking at Bernie versus Joe Biden down the stretch run of all of the primaries, with neither man very likely to be able to attain a majority of the delegates. Now, the one wild card here is Elizabeth Warren. At this point in time, as all of the quote-unquote moderates seem to be coalescing around Joe Biden, is there an argument to be made? Is there an argument to be made? I think there probably is a strong argument to be made, in fact, that Elizabeth Warren benefits Bernie if she would come in and endorse him. Now, I would be tempted, I think, if I'm Bernie Sanders, to say, Elizabeth Warren, you are my vice presidential pick. We're going to unite the left wing of the party, and we'll go head-to-head against Joe Biden and all of the moderate wings of the party. As long as Elizabeth Warren stays in, she actually is helping the moderate wing of the party and working against Joe Biden. So this is going to be interesting to follow. Reports are that Mayor Pete and also that Amy Klobuchar are going to show up at a rally in Texas tonight to endorse Joe Biden in person. And that will be a hell of a thing to watch, because Texas appears to be the biggest battleground that's up for grabs. Otherwise, Bernie is going to win all the Northeast and all the Western states, and Joe Biden is going to win all of the Southern states, much like he dominated in South Carolina. So that's going to be interesting to follow and see what ends up happening there. It's a bit of a team of rivals sort of ticket that is being put together to try and keep Bernie Sanders from being the nominee, as the Democratic race, I think, smartly is aligning against him. Okay, a couple of other things. I think that we're totally panicked over coronavirus. The stock market, last I checked today, coming back up 750 points, helping to erase part of last week's massive sell-off. I understand that there are lots of people out there who want to sell doom and gloom and disaster on a regular basis. And many of them spend all their time on social media convincing you that disaster is going to befall you. I do not believe that the coronavirus is going to destroy our country. I don't believe that it is going to impact hardly any of us at all. It is an illness which will only impact people, by and large, over the age of 75 or 80. If you are healthy, even if you are a child, so far the death rate is minuscule for anybody who is otherwise healthy and is under the age of about 75 years old. It's going to be bad in nursing homes. In fact, in Washington right now, they are finding out retroactively that people have died of the coronavirus that they never even knew had the coronavirus. And that's because for the vast majority of people, the coronavirus is not that bad of a disease. They don't even know that they have it. They don't even go to the doctor. It appears the coronavirus may well have been circulating in the Seattle area for around 6 weeks before anyone even noticed that it was actually there. And that's because for the vast majority of people, the coronavirus doesn't manifest itself any worse than as a cold or as a flu. If you are ill or if you are elderly, then you are particularly susceptible to this disease. But there are a lot of people out there, I think, who are rooting for doom to befall us all that aren't actually looking at the data in front of them. As we have become aware of what the coronavirus is, the death rate has plummeted. Everywhere outside of Wuhan, China, has had an incredibly low, less than 1% death rate. And I believe that will continue to lessen as we learn how to treat this disease and how to hopefully keep it from spreading. But what you can do 100% is wash your hands, vampire sneeze, and if you are sick, don't go out in public and spread your disease everywhere. If the media, and I've been on this for a long time, if the media covered car accidents like they are covering the coronavirus, people would be panicked about riding around in their car. If they covered flu deaths like they are covering coronavirus deaths, people would be terrified of going anywhere for fear of getting the flu. 99.9% of you are going to be perfectly fine. Some of you will get ill. Some of you will die. That happens every day all around the globe. Don't lose your minds. Make smart decisions. Keep your wits about you. I said on Friday, it's a great time to invest in the stock market unless you believe we're all going to die of the coronavirus. There is a massive oversell happening right now. You're getting 20, 30, 40% off some great companies right now. Hold your senses. Keep hold of your senses. Go into the stock market, dollar cost average, buy the companies that you already like, or if you want to be super safe, just buy S&P 500 spiders. 500 spiders, right? You know what that is? That's an index fund that collects the 500 largest companies. Put it off to the side. Don't worry about it. Don't look at it for the next 10 years. In 10 years, you'll be very happy about what is going on. All right? Dive in. Make sure that you're making good decisions. So our good friends at Nike, you know the woke company Nike, which is so fast to argue that LeBron and Colin Kaepernick are heroes for all their social justice warrior stands. We know all of them are full of crap, right? Because they don't actually speak out on things that they might have power over, such as how shoes are manufactured, for instance. Well, this is wild. Nike in China is using Muslim slave labor. You know, in China, they have concentration camps where they are relocating Muslims because they don't approve of their religion, millions of them. And as part of the relocation, they are putting them to work as virtual slaves in many of the factories all over China. And guess what they are making there? Your boy LeBron James and your boy Colin Kaepernick's shoes. Now, of course, these guys want to argue, oh, we are the kings of social justice warriordom, and they say absolutely nothing. Not one word at all about something that theoretically they could control or they could speak out about. And this is also an issue with the sports media in general. The sports media doesn't hold LeBron or Kaepernick or anybody else accountable for their commentary. So LeBron James wears equality sneakers while his shoes are being made by Muslim slave laborers in China. Remember Steve Kerr, when asked to speak out on whether he supported democracy and free speech in China, said, well, that's a complicated issue. This doesn't seem to me to be a very complicated issue. If you are King James or you are Colin Kaepernick and you are arguing that you are a social justice warrior who's something more than an athlete, that you are the conscience of America, don't you think maybe you should point out to the company that employs you that they shouldn't be employing slaves? If you claim that you care about black and brown lives, shouldn't you care about Asian Muslims who are being forced to work in slave labor camps so you can make a lot of money on your shoes? You won't hear a word from them. You also won't hear anybody in sports media who's been praising them to the high heavens hold them accountable for this hypocrisy. Welcome to the modern day NBA and social justice warriordom in general. All right, I don't know how many of you actually watch this. Listen to it. How many of you have listened to my wins and losses interview with Art Briles so far? How many of you out there have listened to it or you heard it on the radio show this morning on the Outkick show? If you haven't, I would encourage you again to go download the Wins and Losses podcast. We have had a lot of tremendous interviews, whether it is Kirk Herbstreit, whether it is Paul Feinbaum, Colin Cowherd, Jason Whitlock in the world of media in sports, whether it is a guy like Mike Leach. This week we had Art Briles, and he was absolutely fantastic. He's barely talked to the media at all. He's barely talked to the media, but he has become a victim of the mob. And you need to go listen to it because it's wild to think about. Ken Starr loses his job as Baylor's president and yet is so redeemed that he's able to be the president of the United States defense attorney in his impeachment trial. The athletic director at Baylor sits out for 6 months and gets another job as an AD. Every member of Art Briles' coaching staff is currently employed coaching college football, but Art Briles is suddenly unemployable. Yet when you actually look at the underlying story here, Briles appears to me to have been scapegoated and to have become the victim of a social media mob by and large that is afraid to actually investigate the underlying facts of the Baylor case. Briles has been exonerated by Baylor lawyers. They paid him out on his contract when they fired him. Okay? I believe they were looking for a scapegoat, a head on a platter to try and have people not pay attention to the larger Title IX issues at Baylor, which was far in excess of what was going on in the football program. In particular, Art Briles was fired because of two cases that got a great deal of attention. Sam Ukwuechu, who was accused of rape, never played for Baylor, and after a 5-year legal process was eventually cleared, and also the Sean Oakman, who was the big defensive end that was otherwise going to be a first-round pick. He was accused of rape. It took 3 years for him to go on trial, and once he went on trial, he was almost immediately found not guilty. If you follow these cases at all, Google these two guys. That was part of the reason that Art Briles was fired, was the behavior and charges that were leveled against these two guys, neither one of whom ended up being convicted of anything. Okay? This is a story that is worth following. What scares me about the era that we live in is not just that social media mobs exist, okay? It is that social media mobs exist and people become so afraid to stand up to them that there's no one out there to speak to Art Briles or even defend him in the least, because people are afraid that they will get tarred and feathered if they are willing to defend somebody who is unpopular and stand up to the social media mob. People don't disagree that rape and sexual assault are wrong. What they disagree on is whether or not we should presume that someone is guilty because they are accused of rape or sexual assault. And this is the lawyer in me that keeps hammering this home time after time after time. Just because you're accused doesn't mean you're guilty. Look at what happened with Sean Oakman and look at what happened with A.J. Johnson at Tennessee. As soon as they actually got in front of a jury, after years of waiting for their time in front of a jury heard all the evidence and unanimously found them not guilty. How do they regain the years that they were held up in their life by the prosecutors? They never can. It is, in my opinion, prosecutorial misconduct. If you bring a felony case against someone, a jury hears your entire case over a week's time and spends 45 minutes debating before they determine that the person is not guilty. The charges that are initially brought get all of the attention. We aren't willing to wait for the actual verdict. And when we get the actual verdict, it very often gets a scintilla of the attention of the initial charges. All I'm asking for you to do is go listen to that Art Briles interview and then do your own research in the case. Art Briles, I believe, was a scapegoat for a broken Title IX system at the larger University of Baylor. He should be able to coach college football again, in my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. You can go look at the evidence yourself, but don't allow the media to make you believe something which may well not be a fundamental truth when you actually look at the facts of the case. What disappoints people, oftentimes, who are my critics, is they're upset that I don't take things at face value. They're upset that I actually dive into cases and look at the evidence and consider the totality of circumstances. Don't allow yourself to be a sheep. Look at the evidence yourself. Go listen to my interview with Art Briles. Use it as a jumping off point for your own investigation into the case. And I think many of you will end up agreeing with me that Art Briles was treated in a fundamentally unfair manner. Finally, Fury Wilder 3 is going to be on July 18th at the MGM in Las Vegas. The only way I see Deontay Wilder winning this fight is if, one, he has a puncher's chance. He happens to catch somebody with happens to catch Fury with a punch like he did a couple of times in the first fight. Or, two, Fury spends too much time celebrating, believes he is substantially better than Deontay Wilder, and doesn't prepare as much as he should have in this case. But assuming that everything is basically the same, I don't see a way that Deontay Wilder wins. I like Tyson Fury to get it done again. I don't blame Wilder for exercising the clause in his contract to allow him to have another fight, but I am of the belief that it is unlikely to be a very close battle. I might, though, because it's in the middle of July, actually make my way out there to follow it and actually see that fight in person. All right. Love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. Be live 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on the program radio. Be live on Lock It in about an hour on FS1 at 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. I am now the leader for the season so far. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Kisses. See y'all. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.